Hello everybody, this is Surf, and today with the road to Abexilas getting closer and closer, I thought I'd make a subsection of the traditional Meta Thoughts videos to help people come up with a little guide here to get the best start possible, to get a running start in the new world. Because in the new world, we're all starting on like an even playing field, and it behooves everyone to get the best start possible. So I got a little guide for you here. And like the traditional videos of old, we've got three categories. High priority locations, and that's sort of like what kind of genre of nation you're playing, whether you're a trade nation, a warrior nation, etc. We've got exporting soft power, how you're going to want to interact with your neighbors, and then hard power. So if you really want to do some like early game wars on like small nations versus small nations, it's a little of that. So with that being said, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment if you're enjoying what I'm doing here. But without further ado, let's dive on in. First things first here is high priority locations. Now, the locations you're looking for depend sort of entirely, not exclusively, but they can be very important to what type of nation you're playing, whether you're playing like a trade nation, a warrior nation, or something that's intentionally minor, like you have no ambition of becoming a world power. You just want to keep it small, you want to keep it local, and things like that. So let's start with the trade nations. Now, where would be a good location for a trade nation to set up? First thing is like a seaport or something. You're going to look for the mouths of rivers. All coastline is going to suit your purposes in this regard, but like if you can control the mouth of a river, like keep it open so people can travel, it would increase traffic to your place. But just being at the junction of many waterways will help you a lot. Also, if you prefer sort of like a land route, the mountain passes will be something that you would want to heavily consider. If there's one sort of convenient way from traveling through one part of a continent to another, and that's through a mountain pass, it would behoove you heavily to set up shop there and monetize to passers-by. Lastly, sort of, if you want to control a limited resource, like you wanted to set up in a mesa or whatever, to sort of sell all of those terracotta of all different shades, you would want to set up there. Or, like, if you want some, like, aquamarine or whatever, you can set up, like, under the water in, like, a sea temple. I think that'd be pretty cool. But, yeah, try to corner the market on a specific resource if you're a trade nation, and that would go a really, really long way. The second category I've listed here is Marshal Nations. If you want to be a nation that is known for its warfare, its PvP, defending its allies, etc., maybe a Marshal Nation is for you. And the types of locations you're going to want to look at is maybe like a really flat open area. Think of like a city in a plains biome so they can see you from afar. They can see your prowess and your grandeur from afar. Also on like a mountaintop, if you wanted to do sort of like a warrior temple style thing, you could set up in real remote places on mountaintops and have little temple structures. Or alternatively, you can go like secret army style and have an underground city. You want to hollow out a big area and build a city underground and put some like stalagmites in there and just be this sort of sleeping giant aesthetic under the ground, waiting for war. Sort of like, if you know about 40k, the Necrons, it can be sort of like a Necron type of aesthetic, and I think that'd be fun. Now, the third and last thing in this section is for those nations who want to stay intentionally minor. Say you just want to have a collection of farms or something where you don't have ambitions of grandeur and world powerness. Where do you want to go? I'd say maybe like desert areas, places that's likely to be a little less traveled, or stay up in the mountain ranges in tough terrain where a player might avoid simply out of convenience of travel. You can dig into the mountains. You can have like a dwarf-like structure. I think dwarves, at least as they're commonly perceived in society, are very reclusive. They stay in the massive mountain holdfasts and do their own thing, mining deep in the mountains. You can try that. Or something like a island or archipelago kind of nation. If you want to stay sort of out of the way, islands and archipelagos are really sort of the way to go. I don't think you're going to be running into much trouble, except if, like, some much bigger nation wants like a trading outpost. But I'll be talking about treaty ports a little later in this video, so stay tuned on that one, and you might discover some additional context that'll help you out. The second major category we have here is soft power, and the first, and in my opinion most important of these, is discord diplomacy. When you're making a nation, and whether you're a founder or a diplomat in your specific nation, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get involved in other servers, see what they're doing, make friends, make contacts, get a network going. Your network is your net worth, as they say, and you will be doing much better for yourself if you know and have a correspondence going with other leaders rather than staying very isolationist until they're pounding at your door with the swords and the netherite. Also, in the realm of discord diplomacy, you are going to want to sort of, if you're already considering making a nation, you're going to want to start pre-writing your advertisements and your sort of RP announcements. Try to figure out what you want and what you want your nation to do before it's even available to start acting in the world space. Think of your ambitions, your aesthetics. We'll be talking about aesthetics real soon, but what your nation looks like, how the culture is, how the people act, how certain characters from the past act if you want to write lore, And also, like I said, the most important thing out of everything I've said in this section is correspondence with neighboring leaders. Make friends. If you're taking notes, underline it, put a star on it. Make friends with other national leaders. It will probably just save your life in more ways than you'll ever know if you know these guys, you have a personal correspondence, and you interact. If they think of you as a friend, they aren't going to invade you, history says. So keep that very well in mind. Now that we talked about how you might want to react on the Discord sort of in the meta sense, now we can start contemplating more of the physical sense of the nation, the aesthetics, sort of your culture and identity of a nation. Now this goes hand in hand with a lot of neography videos, if you ever watch that. That's when you're creating a writing system, how you want to make an alphabet and structure a fantasy language. I feel that it's sort of the same sort of vibe when you're constructing a nation and you need to start looking at symbolism and flags and, of course, language, like I said before. Like if you're doing a very martial, very authoritarian nation, you might want very hard, very straight lines. Meanwhile, if you're sort of got like a nature aesthetic, peaceful, or trade or something, you're going to want more flowy designs, more swirls or curves in a flag or national symbols. And also, you're going to want to just start writing in general, start writing your nation's lore. I know sort of we're all going to Abexilas via a comet, but that's only if you plan on keeping a character that you've been using the past, like, however long you've been playing. But shoot, I'm sure there'll be a ton of people who are starting brand new characters and pretending or role-playing that they've been on Abexilas their whole life or something. But no matter what, whether you are starting a new character or continuing to use an existing one and are making a nation, now is the time to start writing and feeling out exactly what you want, how you want to theme your stuff. And don't be afraid to look pretty deep into history. When I was running a nation that became COG, and then a lot of other things nowadays, I haven't kept up with it, to be perfectly honest with you. Our aesthetic was like Rhenish / Alsatian. That's like the mix between German and French sort of culture right there on that line between the Rhine and the Alsatian mountains. So keep it well in mind and figure out what you want. Now we get into some of the more unsavory aspects of soft power here with our sort of last subsection under the soft power heading here. And the first strategy that came to mind to me is treaty ports. Now, with aesthetic, not necessarily in practice, but aesthetically speaking, think like the Jing in the 19th century, how you can negotiate with another power to have either a slip of territory, or maybe not even represented on the map at all. But what it is a agreement between you and another nation to let them set up shop on your territory and sell things to your citizens for the purposes of convenience. Say you're in a desert and another nation across a body of water has a lot of wood. You can set up a treaty with this other nation, and they either make a little new plot of land that is under your sort of color on the map, or they can have just a little dot on your coastline that's theirs, depending on whatever you guys negotiate. And they can have a little settlement there that has all of the sort of wood products that your citizens can come to and buy. It's a win-win. All your citizens get wood for good prices, good relations with the other nation, and the other nation has a little bit of additional income. And say, same analogy, say they have wood, you are in a desert, you can sell them sand, sandstone, all the products that can come from a desert for real cheap on their territory. A little give and a little take. You know, they can have a little notch of your territory, they can have a little notch of yours. It all works. This next section is for the Machiavellians among you. Let's say, for example, we make up a scenario where there are bandits harassing and haranguing traders, travelers, passers-by, but they're sort of outside of your territory. And keep in mind, this doesn't even have to be real. This doesn't even have to have actually happened. All you're going to need to do is just put it in, like, the announcements and stuff, like the RP announcements, national announcements, whatever. Say this is happening in a, like, territory outside of your borders, and say, as a goodwill gesture, as, like, our benevolent hand, we have the resources to provide, so we are going to be sending armed men outside of our territory to protect from bandits. And that's meta right there, I think, because then you're sort of really strong-arming other nations around you, and you've got armed men in their territory, but you're doing it under the guise of slaying bandits, so it's all right. It'll be up to you how you want to implement that, if you do at all. But it's definitely a very underhanded tactic to like not necessarily do anything, because no war has been declared. You're just got like a party of heavily armed PvPers in another guy's nation, just like sort of intimidating people. But that can be a very powerful tool if you know what you're doing, especially if you have experience with this being in a PvP nation on Stoneworks before. Last here in the soft power section is a tried and true method of sort of formalizing respect between two nations, and that is the embassy. People have been doing this for a long time, and it is highly recommended. Just because it's a building in your city most of the time, it is a totem of reverence and respect between these two nations. Having your embassy in their capital and their embassy in your capital sort of goes a long way to feeling like you are able to reach out and communicate with them anytime over whatever, even if it's just a chat, or you're trying to formalize a treaty, or you're going to war together, and things like that. It's highly recommended. We've been doing this since the start of Stoneworks, and under no circumstances would I recommend stopping now. Third and last section here is early game hard power. And how are you going to do this? How are you going to gain respect and reputation as a viable PvP player in the early game of Abexilas? Now, the first thing here is the participation in foreign wars. Now, in the very early game, the servers controlling aristocracy is going to be at its most infantile. You know, people are going to have to grind for months or maybe even years before we get to the same level that Rathnir or Eldham was at with its server aristocracy, the same group of people calling all the shots. So, what you're going to want to do, in my opinion, in the early game is, if there is a war declared and you don't have it doesn't involve you at all, just do a little research. Look into the nations, see who has more people, see who has less people. Maybe even go into the DMs of the nation leaders and see what you can negotiate for. Show them your how many people you can bring to bear and help them out. Or if you're a little bit more unethical, threaten them. You know, say maybe give me this and I won't get involved. Maybe I'll stay out of it if you give me this or that. But participation in foreign wars is going to be very important. I would recommend for new nations in Abexilas to pitch in, maybe even informally, as a sort of not mercenaries, but like volunteers, foreign volunteers, and see how that goes. 'Cause I think you could form a ton of friendships, and alternatively, maybe even a few enemies too. But they don't have to know you're there, you know. Usually, when there's a war, any nation who's at war will take anyone they can get, and so you're more likely to make friends and not enemies as a result of this, I think. Next thing I want you to think about is confrontation with unaffiliated land claims. This is sort of how, within an ethical framework, we're going to keep it ethical here, how to, if you find a land claim that is not marked on any official server map or nation, going to this place, going to this land claim, and saying that you're here and that you want them to be part of your nation, sort of reach out, see what they can do, but also, like, feel free to, like, in a very passive way, put your foot down a little. Maybe, like, put some, like, national symbols just on the outside of the border claim, the border of the claim, and, like, I don't know, a couple signs here and there. It's like, this is so and so's territory. Let them know. Don't harass them. Don't try to take their stuff. But, like, just let them know. Just send a message, And don't be mean. Just as statements of fact. You know what I'm saying? Now, the last part of the last section here is probably has got the most merit of the section. It's server events and common enemies. Now, server events are pretty self-explanatory. The admins of the server get together, and there's some big bad, like entropies here or some other big deity thing, and we're gonna all get on the server and we're gonna put a stop to it. Get on the bandwagon. We're going to kill a god. It's just whatever events that the admin put together for the sort of the users of the server as a whole. Common enemies are something that is a lot more grassroots. For common enemies, you can think of when, like, Elysia was kicking around in the first days of Eldham, and everybody got together and was like, hey, don't be a dick, and they all just sort of destroyed Elysia and separated out and leased out all of its points to new nations. Other examples I can think of is, like, Bardonia or Araka, just massive, like, PvP nations and things like that. Other players who have played will obviously know other things, like other instances of this happening. But it's always a good idea to throw your hat in the ring when it comes to these large server get-togethers, these large server throwdowns. And it doesn't even matter if you die. Just, like, have your name there, contribute. Make people see your name often enough to recognize you when you're out and about doing other things. And so, my faithful viewer, we made it to the end. What do you think? What are your ideas? What have you experienced in the past, and what strategies are you going to implement in Abexilas in the future? Let me know. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one very, very soon. Bye-bye.